The conversation with Emma stuck with me long after she left that night. I could tell that she didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what I was saying. To her, I was still the woman who had trouble understanding her smartphone and needed help, figuring out how to send a text message with more than one word. She had always seen me as someone who'd aged out of the world of business and money, someone who was meant to sit back and let the younger generation take the reins. But what she didn't understand, what she couldn't see, was the foundation I had been quietly building under her nose. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't something that screamed, "Look at me." But it was there, solid, unshakable, and growing stronger every day. I kept investing, kept refining my approach. I didn't take wild risks like some people did. I wasn't gambling on the latest trend or chasing after the next big thing. I stuck to what I knew, what I understood. I studied companies, analyzed their financials, and researched their leadership teams. I was methodical. I wasn't in a hurry to make a quick buck. I wanted something lasting, something that would not only support me but also provide security and opportunity for Emma when the time came. But Emma still didn't get it. Every time I brought up my investments, she seemed to brush them off. It was like she couldn't wrap her head around the idea that I, of all people, was capable of building something substantial with my own hands. The world had changed so much since I was young, but I didn't need to be swept away by it. I just needed to understand it, and that's exactly what I did. What Emma didn't see was that this wasn't just about making money. It was about the satisfaction of taking control over my own future. It was about proving to myself that age wasn't a barrier, that being older didn't mean being irrelevant. The world had taught me that it was okay to slow down, to accept a life of leisure and quiet. But I rejected that notion. I refused to be written off as someone who couldn't make an impact. By now, I had invested in everything from small tech startups to green energy companies, from real estate properties in emerging markets to bonds that generated a steady stream of income. It was all a carefully curated portfolio, a strategy designed for stability rather than volatility. I had diversified. I had made smart, calculated decisions that ensured my wealth would continue to grow even when the market fluctuated. I wasn't just relying on one source of income. I had multiple streams of revenue, all working together to create a financial safety net that was more than enough to cover my needs. But no one knew this. No one, except for me. I didn't boast about it. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't need to. Every day, as I saw my investments grow, I felt a quiet sense of pride. It wasn't about showing off. It was about building something that would change the course of my life, and eventually Emma's too. I think part of me wanted to shield her from it. I wanted her to succeed on her own, to build her own wealth in her own way. I didn't want her to think that all she had to do was sit back and let the money flow in. I wanted her to understand that it was hard work, that it took time, dedication, and patience. I wanted her to see that success wasn't just about what you achieved, but about how you achieved it. I suppose I was waiting for the right moment, the right time to show her the fruits of my labor. But that time didn't come quickly. The longer I waited, the more I realized that Emma had her own life, her own plans, and her own approach to things. She wasn't ready to see what I was doing. Not yet, anyway. But I knew deep down that when the time came, when she saw the results of my work, she would understand. She would see that I wasn't just sitting idly by. I was taking control of my life in a way that would shape the future, both for me and for her. In the meantime, I had my own plans. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to slow down. This wasn't just about the money. It was about my own sense of empowerment. It was about showing the world and myself that age was just a number and that I still had something valuable to contribute. I wasn't just a grandma. I was an investor. I was someone who had learned how to make her money work for her, someone who had taken control of her own destiny, and I was damn proud of it. The day Emma finally came to me with questions was one I'd been waiting for. It wasn't a dramatic, life-changing moment. It wasn't some big revelation. It was just a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when the world feels calm and everything seems to slow down just enough for the pieces to fall into place. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when Emma called. I could hear the hesitation in her voice as she said, "Mom, can we talk about something?" I wiped my hands on a dish towel, feeling a rush of anticipation. "Of course, sweetheart. What's going on?" "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about your investments, and, well, I don't know. I've been reading a little about it, and I feel like maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't understand it as well as I thought." That was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my tone even. "What do you mean, honey?" "I guess I just want to know more. I don't know how to start. I don't even know where to look." "But you're doing well with it, right? I'm not stupid. This stuff is important. I think I've been avoiding it, but it's becoming clear that I can't keep ignoring it. I don't want to keep putting off thinking about my future. I guess I need to start taking it more seriously." There it was. She was admitting it. She was asking for help. She had crossed that line from thinking it was all some strange hobby of mine to realizing that it was something more, something that had real power behind it. I smiled to myself. It wasn't a victory yet, but it felt like progress. "Emma, it's never too late to start. You've already got the most important thing, the willingness to learn, and that's half the battle. The rest is just a matter of understanding the basics and then building on them." "Yeah, I know. It's a lot. I don't even know where to begin." I leaned against the counter, trying to hide the excitement that was bubbling inside me. This wasn't the time to gush about how proud I was of her for asking. It wasn't about me. It was about her stepping into her own potential. "Well," I said, taking a deep breath, "it all starts with the basics. You've got to understand your goals, your time frame, and your risk tolerance. What do you want your money to do for you? How much can you afford to invest? Do you want to play it safe, or are you willing to take on a bit more risk for bigger returns?" She paused for a moment. "I think I want to do both. Play it safe, but also take some chances. Maybe invest a little and see where it goes." "Good," I said. That's exactly how I started. It's all about balance. And, you don't have to dive into the deep end right away. Start with something small, something you're comfortable with. Over time, you'll start to understand the flow of things. You'll see what works for you. We talked for over an hour that afternoon. I didn't overwhelm her with everything I had learned over the years. I knew I had to take it slow, introduce her to the concepts one step at a time. I talked about the importance of setting up a budget, tracking spending, and then gradually moving into investing. I explained the different types of investments, stocks, bonds, real estate, and how they each served a different purpose. But the most important thing I wanted her to understand was that it wasn't about making money fast. It was about understanding the process and having patience. I told her that some of the best investors in the world are those who know how to wait for the right opportunities and then strike when the time is right. As we spoke, I saw a shift in her demeanor. She wasn't just humoring me anymore. She was truly listening, absorbing what I was saying. It was like a light had gone on for her. And that was the turning point, the moment I knew I'd gotten through to her. I also talked about my own journey, how it hadn't always been easy, how I had started out with very little knowledge and had made plenty of mistakes along the way. I didn't want her to think that everything had been smooth sailing for me. It wasn't, but every mistake was a lesson, and every lesson had led me to a place where I was now financially independent, where I could make my own choices without worrying about running out of money. After our conversation, Emma seemed lighter, more energized. She was starting to see the possibilities, starting to understand that this wasn't just about numbers and charts. It was about her future. "Thanks, Mom," she said, standing up to leave. "I'm going to look into some of this. I'm going." to do my research and start small. I think I can do this." "You can," I said, smiling at her, "and I'll be here every step of the way." Watching her walk out the door, I felt a sense of pride in my heart. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about proving a point to her. It was about giving her the tools, the knowledge, and the confidence to take control of her own future. I wasn't just making her a millionaire through my investments. I was empowering her to make her own way, to build her own legacy. And in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Emma threw herself into learning about investing, diving into the basics with the same intensity that she applied to everything else in her life. It was a little surreal, honestly. The daughter I had once seen as someone who didn't have time to worry about such things was now sitting at her dining room table late into the night, reading about stocks and watching videos about mutual funds. I could hear her excitement in her voice when she called. "Me after work or on weekends?" "Mom, I just opened my first brokerage account," she'd say, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "I've been reading about ETFs, and I think I want to start with one of those. I don't want to take too many risks, but I want to do something that could grow over time." I could barely contain my pride. It was like watching someone learn to walk again, but this time it was with the confidence of someone who understood the path ahead. She wasn't rushing into anything. She wasn't trying to hit it big in a day. She was taking it step by step, just like I had done when I first started. Emma had always been sharp, but when it came to money, she had been a little distant. She didn't see the importance of it. She didn't understand why someone would care so much about stocks and bonds. But now, it was like she had found a new part of herself, something she had never known was there. One afternoon, I invited her over to my house for tea. As we sat in the garden, I couldn't help but ask, "How's it going with your investments, Em?" She leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Actually, it's going really well. I started with just a few $100s, and it's small right now. But I'm learning a lot. I'm sticking to what you taught me, diversifying, being patient, and doing my research. And I think I might add a little bit more to my portfolio next month." "That's exactly the way to go," I said, watching her face light up. "You're learning, you're taking your time, and you're setting yourself up for the future. That's all any of us can do." She looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "I think I finally get it, Mom. I mean, I always knew you were smart, but I didn't know you were so, well, powerful. I never thought I could do something like this, but you're showing me that I can. You've built all this wealth, and not just for yourself, for me too." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't just seeing me as a grandma anymore. She was seeing me as an equal, as someone who had created something meaningful. I had shown her that age wasn't an obstacle, that it wasn't too late to learn and grow, no matter where you were in life. "I didn't do it for you, Em," I said softly. "I did it for me. I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something, that I could do something beyond what I was expected to. But now, yes, now it's about both of us. I'm glad you're taking it seriously, that you're making it your own." Emma reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I've always looked up to you, Mom, but now I'm looking at you in a whole new way. I think I was wrong about you. I thought you were just, well, a grandma, but you're so much more than that. You've changed my whole perspective." I squeezed her hand in return. "You've got it, Em. You're the one doing the work now. You're the one building your future. All I did was show you the way." We sat in silence for a few moments, the sound of birds chirping in the background. There was a shift between us, an unspoken understanding. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about empowerment, legacy, and taking control of our lives, together. In the weeks that followed, I watched Emma transform. She was no longer intimidated by the stock market or by investing. She was diving into the world of personal finance with enthusiasm. She started a budget, tracked her spending, and set financial goals. She even opened a high-yield savings account and started contributing to a retirement fund. It wasn't all glamorous or flashy. It wasn't about making headlines or showing off wealth, but it was about building something solid, something sustainable. I began to realize that, in a way, I wasn't just making Emma a millionaire through my investments. I was giving her the tools to make herself wealthy, not just financially, but in every sense of the word. I was giving her the power to control her own future, to break free from the chains of uncertainty that so many people live with. And in how? Return. She was helping me too. She made me feel seen, appreciated, and understood in ways I hadn't expected. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was my partner in this journey. We were building a future together, one investment at a time. As the months passed, Emma's confidence grew. I'd see her researching stocks late into the night, studying the market trends, and making decisions with more clarity than I ever imagined she would. Her portfolio was steadily growing, and though she remained cautious, I could see the spark of excitement in her eyes whenever she talked about it. She no longer viewed investing as something distant or unattainable. It had become part of her life, part of her identity. But the deeper shift was something I couldn't ignore. Emma was beginning to look at me differently, no longer as the grandmotherly figure who could do little more than offer advice on life, but as someone who had lived through the highs and lows, someone who had carved her own path and built something extraordinary with quiet determination. She started to ask me more questions, to seek my input not just on investments, but on other areas of her life. "Mom, you've taught me so much about money," she said one evening over the phone. "But how did you manage to stay so focused? How did you not let fear get in the way of making decisions?" I sat back for a moment, taking in the question. How did I do it? How had I found the strength and courage to make decisions that shaped the course of my future, even when the odds weren't in my favor? It wasn't something I'd ever really thought about. I just did what I had to do. I had been determined to make my own way after my husband's passing, to make sure I didn't rely on anyone else to secure my future. Fear wasn't something I could afford. I didn't have time for it. "I think it comes down to one thing," I said softly. "The realization that nothing happens if you don't try. The fear is always there, but you can't let it paralyze you. You have to be willing to take risks, not reckless ones, but calculated ones. You do your research, and then you make your move. And when you fail, and trust me, you will fail sometimes, you just pick yourself back up and keep going. The only true failure is giving up." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her processing what I said, perhaps weighing it against her own life and her own hesitations. Finally, she spoke. "That makes sense," she said, the tone in her voice softer now, more reflective. "I think I've been scared of making the wrong decisions, of losing money, of looking stupid if it doesn't work out. But I see now that it's all part of the process. I have to learn from those mistakes." "You're exactly right," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "Every mistake is a lesson. Don't be afraid of them. You'll grow stronger from every setback. It's the people who learn to embrace those setbacks who end up being the most successful." And just like that, Emma began to change. She stopped second-guessing herself every time she made a move. She started trusting her judgment, applying the principles I had shared with her, and adding her own flair to her approach. I watched as she made decisions with more conviction, as she built a portfolio that reflected not just my teachings, but her own emerging vision for her financial future. It was no longer about following in my footsteps, it was about carving out her own path. The next big moment came when she made her first significant investment in a startup. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was her first real leap of faith, a decision based on her own research, her own instincts. She'd been watching the company for months, seeing how they were growing, and she felt confident that it was a good move. When she called me to tell me about it, I could hear the excitement in her voice. "Mom, I did it. I bought shares in that company we were talking about last week. It's not a huge investment, but I feel good about it." I could tell she was on the verge of something big. She wasn't just dipping her toes in anymore. She was diving in, head first, ready to take on whatever came next. And I couldn't have been prouder. "You're going to do great," I told her. "Just keep doing what you've been doing. Stay patient, stay informed, and don't let fear drive your decisions. The future is yours to shape." Over the next few months, Emma's portfolio continued to grow. She started branching out into more complex investments, learning to balance higher risk opportunities with the steady, reliable returns from her safer investments. She reached out to me for advice occasionally, but more and more, I found myself asking her questions, seeking her opinion on things. She had grown in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I couldn't have been happier to see her take control of her own financial destiny. But the transformation wasn't just financial, it was emotional too. Emma was no longer the young woman who relied on others to figure things out for her. She was becoming someone who trusted her own judgment, who could walk into any room and make decisions with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I had started this journey with the intention of showing her that I wasn't just a grandma, that I was someone who had something valuable to offer. But in doing so, I had given her more than money. I had given her the tools to change the way she thought about herself and her future. I had helped her realize that she wasn't bound by the same expectations the world had placed on her. And in the process, I had learned a valuable lesson of my own. I wasn't just making Emma a millionaire through my investments. We were both becoming millionaires in our own right, not just in terms of money, but in terms of the strength we had gained, the confidence we had built, and the legacy we were creating together. As Emma's financial acumen continued to grow, I found myself reflecting on the path I had taken to get to this point. What had started as a quiet, almost secretive endeavor to secure my own future had blossomed into something so much more meaningful. My journey had never been just about money. It had always been about empowerment. But the way it had changed, Emma, the way it had shifted the course of her life, made me realize how far-reaching this transformation really was. It wasn't just Emma who had benefited from all of this. It was the ripple effect of everything we'd both learned, the impact on our families, our relationships, and how we viewed the world. My new perspective on life had unknowingly started to influence the people around me. It had been more subtle than I ever anticipated, but I could see it in the way my friends and relatives spoke about their own financial futures. The conversations had shifted. People were talking about saving, investing, and planning for the future. Even my neighbors, who used to talk about retirement with a sense of resignation, were beginning to open up about setting financial goals and seeking ways to grow their wealth. There was one conversation in particular that stood out. I had a close friend, Lorraine, who had always been a little skeptical of financial planning. She believed in saving, but the idea of taking risks or even looking into the stock market seemed daunting to her. Whenever I mentioned my investments, she'd smile politely, but quickly change the subject. One afternoon, after having spent a few hours talking to Emma about her latest investment decisions, I bumped into Lorraine at the grocery store. As we chatted, she seemed unusually quiet, like she was holding something back. Finally, she turned to me and said, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you've been doing with your money. Maybe I should start taking it more seriously. I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck, and frankly, I'm worried about what will happen when I can't work anymore." I felt a wave of warmth wash over me. It wasn't just about Lorraine deciding to finally take the leap into investing. It was the realization that the changes I'd made in my own life were now affecting the people I cared about. I was no longer just a quiet figure in the background. I was part of a larger conversation about financial empowerment, and people were listening. "I think it's time for you to take the plunge, Lorraine," I said, my voice steady but filled with encouragement. It doesn't have to be scary. Start small, educate yourself, and then make decisions that feel right for you. It's not about taking huge risks, it's about being informed and making steady progress. She nodded, the uncertainty in her eyes slowly turning into something resembling hope. I've been reading up on some of it. I think I'll start looking into some retirement accounts, and maybe even dip my toes into some low-risk investments. I smiled. I'm proud of you. Just take it one step at a time. And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. You're doing this for your future. Lorraine left that day with a renewed sense of possibility. It wasn't a huge breakthrough, but it was enough to show me how my journey had started to affect others. In a way, this wasn't just about Emma or even about me. It was about a larger shift in how we, as women, were approaching the idea of wealth, independence, and self-sufficiency. We were no longer sitting on the sidelines, waiting for someone else to provide for us. We were taking control. When I look at Emma now, I don't just see the young woman who once thought of me as just a grandma. I see a confident, capable investor, a woman who is no longer afraid of taking risks and learning from her mistakes. She's built her portfolio, but she's also built something even more important, a sense of independence, a belief in her own abilities to shape her future. And the best part is, she's not alone in this journey anymore. She's now part of a wider community of women who are breaking free from the traditional expectations placed on them. We are redefining what it means to be financially empowered. And then there's me. I never imagined that my investments would lead to this kind of impact, this sense of purpose, this feeling that I was not only improving my own life, but helping others do the same. I never imagined that one decision, one shift in mindset could change so much. But it has, and it continues to ripple outward. The truth is, it's not about the $1 million. It's about the journey, the lessons learned along the way, the empowerment that comes from taking control of your own destiny, and the impact you can have on others when you refuse to settle for less than what you deserve. I didn't just make Emma a millionaire. I made her the kind of woman who knows her worth, who understands that she can build her own future from the ground up. And that's the real treasure. It wasn't long after Lorraine's decision to start investing that things took an unexpected turn. It started with a phone call I received one afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen table, enjoying a cup of tea, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick it up. "Hello?" I said, curious. "Hi, is this Mrs. Anderson?" The voice on the other end was friendly but formal. "I'm David Reynolds, and I'm calling from a financial advisory firm in the city. I've been following your investment strategies for some time now, and I wanted to reach out to see if you'd be interested in collaborating on a project we're working on." I nearly dropped my cup. My mind raced. I hadn't told anyone about my investments outside of Emma, and even then I had kept things vague. Who was this person? How did they know about my financial strategies? "I'm sorry, you've been following my strategies?" I asked, still trying to make sense of it. "How exactly did you come across my name?" David chuckled lightly, as if my surprise was a common reaction. "Well, we've been tracking some of the most successful retail investors in the region, and your name came up. I must say, we were impressed by the way you've built your portfolio with such consistency and precision. We'd love to talk to you about possibly sharing your insights with our clients. We think you could add a unique perspective to our work." I was stunned. It felt like I was hearing something out of a dream. My investments, my quiet personal success, had somehow caught the attention of a professional financial firm. This wasn't something I had planned for. I had never thought of myself as a guru or someone with enough expertise to be considered an authority. Yet here was someone from a firm offering me a platform to share my knowledge with others. "I'm flattered," I said cautiously. "But I'm not really sure I'm the right person for that kind of thing. I've just been doing what works for me. I don't have any formal qualifications or anything like that. David's voice was reassuring. We're not looking for credentials, Mrs. Anderson. We've seen your success, and we think your approach could resonate with our clients, particularly those who are new to investing. You've demonstrated an ability to take calculated risks and make smart decisions based on your own research. That's what matters most. I sat back in my chair, stunned into silence for a few moments. The idea of sharing my story, of being recognized for something I had done quietly for years, was both exciting and intimidating. I'd always been someone who preferred to stay behind the scenes, never one to seek the spotlight. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was an opportunity to not only expand my own knowledge, but to help others, especially women like me, who felt like they didn't belong in the world of investing. Okay, I said, finally finding my voice. I'm interested. What exactly are you proposing? David explained that the firm was developing a series of workshops and webinars aimed at helping beginner investors understand the basics of the stock market, real estate investing, and retirement planning. They wanted me to come in as a guest speaker, to share my journey and explain how I had approached my investments, what had worked for me, and what lessons I had learned along the way. It sounded both challenging and thrilling. I'd love to work with you, I said, the excitement growing. But I have to admit, I've never done anything like this before. Speaking in front of a group, I'm not sure I'm cut out for it. David laughed again, this time with more warmth. You'd be surprised at how many people are looking for real stories, real experiences, and a genuine perspective. You don't need to be a polished professional. You just need to share what you've learned. Your story is exactly what people need to hear. By the end of the conversation, I had agreed to come on board. It wasn't just a chance to share what I had learned. It was a chance to step even further out of my comfort zone and see how far I could go. To take everything I had quietly built and share it with others who might benefit from it. In the weeks that followed, I prepared for the workshop. I spent hours going through my notes, reflecting on the decisions I had made over the years, the mistakes I had learned from, and the successes I had achieved. The more I wrote, the more I realized that I had built something extraordinary, not just financially, but personally. I had taught myself to trust my instincts, to take calculated risks, and to embrace failure as part of the journey. This wasn't just about making money. It was about creating a life that was truly my own. When the day of the workshop arrived, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was determined to give it my all. I walked into the conference room where a group of eager faces awaited, many of them women around my age, some younger, all looking for guidance and direction. As I stood at the front of the room, ready to speak, I realized that I wasn't just sharing financial strategies, I was sharing the story of my life. And when I finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. I wasn't prepared for that, for the overwhelming feeling of connection and empowerment. It was as if I had opened a door for them, showing them a path they hadn't known existed. And as I looked around at their faces, full of curiosity, hope, and determination, I realized something. This wasn't just about making Emma a millionaire through my investments. It was about giving a whole community of women the confidence to take control of their financial futures, to stop seeing themselves as victims of circumstance, and to start seeing themselves as powerful creators of their own destiny. After the workshop, something shifted inside me. I wasn't sure if it was the energy in the room or the rush of excitement from sharing my journey with others, but I felt as if I had unlocked a new chapter in my life. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about something much deeper. It was about sharing what I had learned, encouraging others, and showing them that they, too, could create a future that felt meaningful and secure. In the weeks that followed, the responses to the workshop were overwhelming. Emails poured in from people I had never met, young professionals, women in their 30s, even some in their 50s and 60s, thanking me for sharing my story, for giving them the confidence to take the next step in their financial journey. Many of them had never considered investing seriously before. Some had thought it was too complicated or that they were too late to the game. But after hearing my story, they realized that it wasn't about being perfect or starting at the right age. It was about taking action. It was about taking control and making small, deliberate moves toward a better future. I received messages from women who were in the same position I had been in not so long ago, feeling lost, unsure, and afraid of making mistakes. They told me how my story had inspired them to stop waiting for permission and start making decisions for themselves. Some of them had started small investments. Others had set up retirement funds. Some were even planning to take real estate seriously, just as I had. But it wasn't just about the people I spoke to in those workshops. This newfound confidence also led me to think more about my own future, what I wanted to create, and how I wanted to continue evolving. I had spent so much time focusing on Emma's journey and helping her grow, but now I was thinking about my own growth. What more could I do? What other parts of my life could I take control of? I decided to expand on the opportunity that had been presented to me. I reached out to David Reynolds, the financial advisor who had first contacted me. I asked if there were more opportunities to speak, more workshops I could host, perhaps even a mentorship program. I had so much to offer, and I was determined not to keep it to myself. David was thrilled with the idea. "I knew you'd be a great fit for this, Mrs. Anderson. We're always looking for fresh perspectives, and your experience is invaluable. We'd love to have you take on a more active role in our programs, perhaps even help us develop a new course on women and investing. There's a real need for it." I agreed to help them design a course specifically aimed at women in later stages of life who felt like they had missed their chance. So many of them, just like me, had put their financial futures on hold for one reason or another. It was time to change that narrative. It wasn't just about accumulating wealth, it was about giving women the knowledge and tools to create something that felt secure and fulfilling. As I worked on the course, I found myself diving deeper into topics I had never fully explored before. I researched the intricacies of wealth management, tax strategies, and how to create a legacy. I thought about how much my life had changed since I started investing, how much my mindset had shifted. I wasn't just learning how to build money. I was learning how to build something that could sustain future generations, something that could impact not only my life, but the lives of others. Soon, I began to feel a sense of responsibility. I wanted to make sure that every woman who participated in my course or attended my workshops left with the confidence to take action. I wanted them to know that there was no perfect time to start, only the time they decided to take charge. And that time was now. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk reviewing the course materials, I realized something profound. By helping others build their own financial futures, I was reinforcing my own. It wasn't just about what I had already accomplished. It was about what we could all accomplish together. By sharing my experience, by empowering others, I was becoming part of something much larger than myself, a movement of women taking control of their financial lives. And through this process, I began to see Emma in a new light. She was no longer just my daughter. She was my partner in this journey, someone who was now helping others just as I had. She had grown into someone who not only understood the value of money, but understood the value of using that money to create opportunities, to build a legacy, and to impact the lives of those around her. One evening, as we sat together having dinner, Emma looked at me with a smile. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything you've taught me, and I want to do more. I want to help other women like you've helped me. I don't know what that will look like yet, but I know that this is something I'm passionate about. I want to make a difference, just like you have." I smiled back at her, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I've always known you were capable of greatness, Em. Now it's your turn to make an impact. We're in this together." The truth was, we had both changed. My investments, which had started as a way to ensure my own future, had blossomed into something far greater. We had both learned that true wealth wasn't just about money. It was about the freedom to shape your life, the ability to inspire others, and the power to make a real difference. Together, Emma and I were creating something much bigger than just financial security. We were building a legacy of empowerment, and that was worth more than any amount of money. The more I worked on the course, the more I realized that this wasn't just about teaching women how to manage their finances. It was about changing the narrative. For so long, women had been told that their place was either in the background or at the mercy of someone else's decisions when it came to money. But that was all changing now. We were taking control of our own futures, and I was proud to be part of that shift. The course I helped design focused not only on the technical aspects of investing, but on the psychological shifts that had to happen for women to truly embrace their power over money. We explored how deeply ingrained societal beliefs about money and gender often held women back, how fear of failure or making mistakes was a huge barrier for many of us. But what I wanted most to instill in the women who signed up was that mistakes were not only inevitable, they were necessary. Every woman who took that course came away with more than just financial knowledge. They left with the understanding that they, too, had the power to change the trajectory of their lives. They didn't need to wait for someone else to hand them an opportunity. They had it within themselves all along. Through this process, I began to see the broader picture. I wasn't just building a portfolio of investments, I was helping build a movement. This wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about fostering independence, confidence, and self-worth. And when women are financially empowered, they can create ripple effects throughout their communities, their families, and the world. One day, after one of my workshops, I received a thank you email from a woman named Clara. She had attended the session with her daughter, a young woman in her early 20s, and Clara wrote that it had been the first time in her life that she had truly understood how to take control of her finances. "I always thought I'd have to rely on my husband or on a man to make the big financial decisions," she wrote. "But after hearing your story, I realized I've been doing it all wrong. I'm not just taking control of my financial future, I'm teaching my daughter to do the same. Thank you for showing us that it's never too late." Reading her words brought tears to my eyes. It was moments like these quiet, powerful shifts in mindset that made all the work worth it. Emma had been right all along when she said that the real value of my story wasn't in the money. It was in the impact it had on others. By empowering Emma, I had unknowingly begun a chain reaction, one that would touch many more lives than I ever expected. And the best part? Emma had become part of that movement too. She was now speaking at workshops and events of her own, offering advice, sharing her story, and encouraging other women to take control of their finances. Together, we were building something that went beyond wealth. It was about empowerment and self-reliance. One evening, as Emma and I sat in my living room chatting over tea, she told me something that struck me deeply. "Mom, I've been thinking about how much your journey has changed me, but it's also made me realize something else. You didn't just teach me how to make money. You taught me how to value myself. I don't think I understood that before." I nodded slowly, feeling a lump in my throat. That's exactly it. It's not about how much we have. It's about understanding that we're worthy of having it in the first place. We're capable of doing this on our own, without asking for permission or waiting for someone else to make the decisions for us. She smiled, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. "You've shown me that we have the power to change our lives. I'm not just following in your footsteps, I'm forging my own path. and that's the best gift you could have ever given me." As I looked at her, sitting there across from me, I realized that my mission had been fulfilled. The journey that had begun with my own quiet determination to take control of my finances had grown into something far greater. I had not only made Emma a millionaire through my investments, I had helped her become a woman who could empower others to do the same. But it wasn't just Emma. It was all the women who had joined us in this journey. It was the women who were starting to understand that they didn't have to wait for a moment of permission to change their lives. They could do it now. They had the tools, the knowledge, and the confidence to make it happen. And when we take control of our money, we take control of our futures. That evening, as we sat there talking about our next steps, I realized something profound. In helping others, I had helped myself more than I could have ever imagined. Real wealth, the true legacy, was not in the dollars and cents that I had earned through my investments. It was in the lives I had touched, the women I had empowered, and the incredible bond Emma and I shared as we built something together. The journey was far from over. There was still so much more to do. But one thing was clear. We were no longer just mother and daughter. We were partners in this movement, two women who had decided to take control of their futures and in the process had changed the world around them. As the months passed, I began to realize just how much of an impact our work had on the world around us. It wasn't just the women who attended our workshops or followed our advice. It was also the younger generation, the ones like Emma, who had grown up with a completely different perspective on what women were capable of. I saw the shift happening in the way people spoke about money and success. No longer were we talking about waiting for a partner, a boss, or even the government to take care of us. We were taking matters into our own hands. Emma and I were now involved in a series of financial literacy events aimed at young women in high school and college. These were the people I never expected to connect with, but when I realized how hungry they were for information, it became clear that we were tapping into something that could grow into a movement. A generation of women, empowered with the knowledge to take control of their financial futures, was just waiting for someone to show them how. One day, during one of our college seminars, Emma and I were standing on stage talking about investing, basics, and how the earlier you start, the better your chances are for building wealth. I could see the excitement in the eyes of these young women, their hunger to learn. As I spoke, I couldn't help but think back to when Emma had first laughed off my attempts to explain how investing could change her life. The irony was almost too much, and now she was standing beside me, fully on board, helping these women see the possibilities in front of them. Afterward, we had a few women come up to us with questions. One of them, a young woman named Riley, asked me how I had managed to stay focused on investing, even when it seemed like the world was moving too fast. "Sometimes I feel overwhelmed," she said, almost apologetically. "Like I'm too young to make the right choices. I'm worried I'll mess up." I smiled, a knowing look passing between Emma and me. "Riley, I've been there. I started later than most people would recommend, and I made mistakes along the way. But that's part of it. You have to trust yourself. There's no perfect time to start, and you're going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. The important thing is to start. Even small steps are better than none at all." Her face lit up. I needed to hear that. Thank you. As Emma and I left the seminar, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about us anymore. It wasn't just about our own growth or our own success. It was about creating something that would outlast us, something that would keep spreading, growing, and inspiring women of all ages to take charge of their own financial futures. I realized that in many ways, the work we were doing with the younger generation was even more important than anything we had done with our peers. These were the women who were going to carry the torch forward. They would be the ones creating a future where financial independence wasn't just a dream, It was a reality for every woman, no matter her age, background, or circumstances. Emma turned to me as we were driving home. "Mom, do you realize what we're doing here? We're changing the way women see themselves. We're not just teaching them about money, we're teaching them about self-worth. They're going to make different decisions than we did, and it's all because of this." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had always known this journey had been life-changing for me, but hearing her express it so clearly made me realize just how far we had come. The work we were doing together wasn't just about investing. It was about creating a whole new culture, a new way of thinking, where women could embrace their financial power without fear, shame, or guilt. And so, as the workshops continued, Emma and I remained dedicated. We started planning even more events, expanding our reach, and involving other women in the process. More and more people were joining the movement. Every day, we were helping women, just like us, break through the barriers that had once held them back. And every day, I felt more and more grateful that I had taken that first step to change my own life. Now, we were changing the world around us. It wasn't just the younger women who were benefiting from our work. Over time, I started hearing from older women too. Women who were in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s, asking questions about how they could take control of their finances and make their money work for them. Many of them had spent their lives putting their family's needs ahead of their own, and now they were wondering if it was too late to start thinking about their future. I heard from one woman, Clara, who had attended a seminar with her daughter, telling me that after years of putting off her own financial planning, she had finally started saving for retirement and investing in the stock market. She'd even opened a small real estate portfolio. "What you're doing is changing lives," she wrote in an email. "I've spent so many years just making do, believing that it wasn't possible for someone like me to make a real difference. But you've shown me that it's never too late." Reading her email was a reminder of how important this work had become to me, not just as a personal mission, but as a legacy. Emma and I were no longer just speaking from a place of expertise. We were now living proof that it was never too late to take control of your financial future. As I reflected on the journey we had undertaken, I realized how much had changed, not just in my life, but in the lives of so many women. Our workshops and courses had helped them see that wealth was not a privilege reserved for the few, but a tool that was available to anyone willing to learn and take action. In a way, I felt like I had come full circle. I had started as a woman who was unsure, uncertain, and hesitant to take financial risks. But I had taken that first step, and each decision, each investment, had led me to a place where I could now teach others to do the same. And not just women, families, communities, generations were being affected by the work we had started. But it wasn't just about teaching the basics of finance. It was about instilling confidence. It was about passing on the knowledge that had taken me years to acquire. And now I was passing that torch to Emma. She had already built her own financial future, but it was clear that her role in this movement was just beginning. She wasn't just learning from me anymore. She was stepping into her own leadership, making her own decisions, and spreading this knowledge to others. As we sat together, planning our next event, Emma turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Mom," she said, "I think it's time we start planning for the next generation, teaching young girls not just about money, but about their own worth. They need to understand this even earlier than we did." I smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over me. "You're absolutely right. It's time to plant the seeds for the future." And so, the journey continued. Emma and I were no longer just mother and daughter. We were partners in a movement that would change the way women saw themselves and their futures. Together, we were passing the torch of empowerment to the next generation, ensuring that they too would have the tools and knowledge to create their own legacies. It was a crisp fall afternoon when I realized we had come full circle. The first time I'd invested, it was an act of survival, ensuring that I could take care of myself after losing my husband. I had been nervous, uncertain, and unsure whether it would work. But now, years later, it was more than just about financial security. It had become about independence, confidence, and an undeniable connection to my own power. Emma and I had just finished one of our final workshops of the year. The turnout was incredible, more women than ever from all walks of life, eager to learn, share, and grow. As I sat on the stage, listening to the questions being asked, the excitement in the room, I realized how far we had come. This wasn't just a story about me or even about Emma. This was a story about the incredible strength and resilience of women who had been told for so long that their place was elsewhere. This was about us stepping into our own futures, together. After the seminar, we sat outside with a cup of coffee, reflecting on the day's discussions. Emma turned to me, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, I think we've really created something special here. It's not just about teaching women how to invest. It's about giving them the courage to take control of their lives." I nodded, feeling the same surge of pride. "It's more than that, Em. It's about showing them that they don't have to wait. They don't have to ask for permission. The power has always been within them." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over us, I realized that Emma wasn't just learning from me anymore. She was teaching me too. She had always been a part of my journey, but now she was helping to guide others. Together, we were not just building wealth, we were building a movement, a legacy that would continue long after we were gone. And in that moment, it wasn't just about the money, it was about the lives we were changing, the confidence we were helping to build, and the legacy of empowerment we were leaving behind. I had spent years quietly building my investments, unsure if anyone would ever notice. But as I looked around at the community Emma and I had created, I saw something far more powerful than the sum of our financial successes. We were building a new reality, a world where women didn't just wait for opportunities, they created their own. The most profound shift in my life wasn't the money I made. It was the realization that the lessons I had learned weren't just about numbers and strategies, they were about trust. Trust in myself, trust in my decisions. Trust that I was capable of building something extraordinary no matter what stage of life I was in. In the early days, when Emma thought of me as just a grandma, I never imagined that we would get here. I never imagined that the lessons I taught her would extend to so many others. And I certainly didn't imagine that she too would become a force in this movement. But as I watched her speak to a group of women about how to approach their finances with confidence, I realized that we had not just changed our lives, we had changed the lives of so many others. The path had been hard at times. There were moments of doubt, setbacks, and challenges. But looking back, every decision, every mistake, every triumph had been worth it. It wasn't about the wealth. It was about the transformation that came with it. It was about showing Emma and so many others that financial freedom was not a privilege for the few, but a power that anyone could claim if they were willing to learn, take risks, and trust in their own ability to create the life they wanted. I wasn't just a grandma anymore. I was an investor, a teacher, a mentor, and most importantly, I was someone who had unlocked the key to empowerment, not just for myself, but for the generations that would follow. And now, as I passed the torch to Emma, I knew she would carry it forward, spreading the lessons, the empowerment, and the message of possibility to women everywhere. The future wasn't just hers, it was ours. Together, we had built something that would continue to grow, inspire, and change the world for generations to come. As we walked into the next chapter, side by side, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. We had built something incredible, something that couldn't be measured in dollars alone. The true wealth we had created was in the confidence, the independence, and the knowledge we had passed on. And I knew that, together, we were just getting started.